Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you all to ET Retail's Fashion Forward panel discussion presented by FASHMATES. The topic for today's discussion is personalization, closing the experience gap in the fashion e-commerce industry. In the age of social media and technology, the way fashion is consumed has changed. Today, buzzwords such as fast fashion, hyper-personalization, mobile and social commerce, and influencer marketing are dominating the Indian fashion industry. Amid this age of evolution, there are some pertinent questions, answers to which will shape the fashion market in India. What is the future of fashion? How retail brands are revamping the fashion industry with new age CX trends and technology. Is hyper-personalization the next big thing in fashion? How are new age technologies helping brands grow closer to consumers? Why are fashion influencers the retailers of 2022? How are fashion retailers enhancing consumers' shopping experience? Today at this platform, we'll get answers to these questions and beyond. The virtual discussion will host prominent faces of the Indian fashion retail industry, fashion influencers, technology solution providers, and industry experts. Ladies and gentlemen, you can drop your session-related questions in the chat box. Our moderator will take your questions in the end of the discussion. Now let's begin the discussion. I would like to invite our moderator, Mr. Rajat Wahi, partner, Deloitte India. Welcome, Rajat.
Thanks.
The panelists for this discussion are Mr. Arvind Singh, co-founder, FASHMATES Inc., Mr. Mohit Roy, fashion stylist, brand incubator and creative director, Ravi Huda, Chief Digital Officer, Raymond Group, Shrikant Chitlur, Chief E-commerce Officer, Shoppers Stop. Thank you all for sparing time and pleasure to have you here. Now I'll hand over to Mr. Wahi. Over to you.
Thanks so much, Aini, and welcome everybody. And big thanks to the panelists as well for making the time. I know it's a Friday, and I'm sure a lot going on as we see the economy reopening, lots of excitement, footfalls coming back, sort of a K-shaped recovery depending on what data you're looking at. Also seeing some headwinds in the business today, inflation, sort of a lot of supply chain disruptions still continuing. So with that, I think the retailers have done a phenomenal job managing their businesses, getting businesses back on track, driving footfalls back onto the high streets and malls. Technology has been a big enabler. So before we start, I'll just come to you guys and maybe talk a bit more briefly about what your role is in your current jobs, what you do, because I think the introduction was very brief. So Shrikant, I'll start with you, and then I'll make my way across the screen.
Thanks, Rajat. Yeah, so I look after the entire digital business for Shoppers Stop, which is our own brand.com, as well as our marketplace business, as well as the overall omnichannel business, which is more to do with how integrated and seamless experience got to be for customers across our channels. So pretty much all of that, yeah.
Thanks, Arvind.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks, Rajat. And this is Arvind Singh. I'm co-founder and chief operating officer for FASHMATES, and I'm essentially looking over entire operations of FASHMATES, both in US market. I would say global because it's US, Europe, and then we're actually expanding in India now.
Thanks, Mohit.
Hi everyone. I am Mohit. I run my own styling consultancy where I work with a lot of real clients as well as a lot of celebrity clients. I style weddings, I style personal wardrobes, and essentially I work with a lot of brands as well, a lot of startup brands and a lot of luxury brands as well, to help them sort of incubate their overall fashion experience and sort of help them build the collections as well from the creative starting point to the end.
Fantastic. And Ravi, over to you.
Hi, Rajat. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. So I'm the Chief Digital Officer at Raymond. My job is basically, in a very, very simple terms, to digitize the complete man as we know the Raymond. Work across both in terms of front-end digital enablement, right from commerce point of view and an engagement point of view, to the backward digitization of the processes and business transformation. That's what I do at Raymond.
Thanks so much. Yeah. So anyway, thank you guys for making the time again. I'm just going to start, Shrikant, with you. Talk a bit about the whole focus on personalization. How are fashion retailers, including yourselves, sort of offering personalization to customers? Is it even a goal? I mean, is it scalable? Because we talk about, you know, you know, getting to the customer of one and having one customer, you know, each customer having their preferences. But we are, you know, at least in terms of data, etc., we see a big gap in being able to do that. Also scalability of that, and how is sort of analytics and digital helping you get to that? And talk a bit about hyper personalization as well, because it's a term that's being bandied around a lot. You keep hearing a lot about it, but you don't see it in your life, in your real life as a shopper. So just talk a bit about that.
Yeah, sure. No, massive advancements have happened in this space, right? I think every time we talked about personalization back in the day, the only thing which used to come to your mind was some product recommendations which is flowing through on your e-commerce journey. But then I think the world has moved on from there, and especially where we are for us, it's not just an online or an offline. It's an omni-channel business which we're after, and that's the entire endeavor. So every investment we make at any area, it needs to drive value for our customers across channels. So having said that, personalization becomes quite a key. There are a whole bunch of use cases I can talk about, but if I say that, let's say what we do online is something which has become a lot more conventional today, right? In terms of how do we give bespoke experiences to customers with regards to their on-site discovery, engagement, or their shopping journeys across all of that. This could be either the recommendations or through search or through banners or through having their own home pages. So there's all of that comes through. But I think the real beauty for us, and which is truly a differentiator, the way we call it, is the fact that how we are learning from those experiences of customers online, and when that customer visits our stores, what sort of experiences we provide to that customer, making it a lot more relevant. Now, what we do here is a whole bunch of data lake kind of process which we follow, which means that at any given point of time, we would know that our customers visiting our sites, our apps, as well as in our stores, what sort of experiences they've been having, what's their discovery, what's their shopping. So we're creating all those cohorts internally. Once we start creating those cohorts, it becomes easier for us to tailor make what sort of experience they need to get. On the online side, it becomes far more easier because it's completely AI driven. But on the offline side, what has been helpful for us, especially during the pandemic, has been the fact that how do we empower our associates are on the shop floor. So we've given them all sorts of tools now, which enables them to understand that a customer walking in the store, what his or her preferences have been, past browsing behavior, past shopping behavior, and what could be the possible wardrobe share we need to go after. So all of those kind of data points is something which is coming onto the shop floor now, because they come in a much better position now. So we have something called personal shoppers. So personal shoppers today contributes 10% of the group sales. And all of those guys are equipped with all these data points about the customer. And more importantly, what helps us is this entire loyalty program, which we call ourselves First Citizens. And First Citizens in a way contributes over 70% of our top line. So with that becomes quite a wealthy data, which we've got, where we exactly know what our customers are looking out for, what they've bought in the past, what could work better for them. So, and accordingly, our associates are helping to help them out. On the online side, when they visit us, we know exactly what this customer is once they sign in. So we know what sort of experience that they've had in the offline as well. So it doesn't become siloed in any form then. And this has been a fairly recent phenomenon, at least in the last 12 months. We've been able to build this tech, which now enables us to do this. And I think as part of the next journey, you pointed out hyper personalization. And again, I think it's a very, very important thing to have hyper personalization, but it's also important for any business to really understand when is the right time, because all of this comes with an investment. So one needs to understand what sort of returns you will get out of it. For us at this stage, even by building multiple cohorts, it's actually giving us the right returns. I think that's pretty good. The making it absolutely one-on-one, we've been doing that in some sense, but again, it depends on scale, and you need to have a lot of data points to really make that happen at scale. So I think hyper personalization, all of these terms have been overused, but I think what becomes important is for every enterprise to truly understand what is the area they want to really make advancements on. What are those touch points which would truly make a difference for a customer to feel different, feel special, because only then there are chances of you driving a better conversion. And that's something which has to be an ongoing journey. I don't think there is any rule book which you can just use and it could work for you, because it has to be bespoke. It really depends. So I think these are topics which have been extremely close to us as an organization, especially during the pandemic, where all of us realized how important the digital journeys are for the customer. And this is not just on the site, on the app, or in our stores, how we treat our customers, but everything to do with from a MarTech standpoint as well, in terms of all the communications we do, whether it's across emails or SMS or push notifications, how we target on social or on Google AdWords. It's pretty much coming from everywhere, because we know for a fact there are multiple touch points for a customer before one shops. In fact, in one of our recent surveys, we figured out that for a customer to convert on an average, it was taking 8 sessions, and 8 sessions across different platforms. So which goes to show how important it is for you to have a lot more curated experience across multiple touch points, rather than making it a siloed approach, because the customer sees you as one brand. So irrespective of the channel you're on. So I think that the important thing is really to acknowledge what is the right personalization you would like to drive, and what's that area which would only ease the customer in better discovery and faster shopping, because sometimes it gets too overwhelming as well when you have too many things going on, and at the right moment as well. And so a lot of A/B testing needs to be done. There is no simple rule book here. So I think it comes with learning, but I think the beauty lies in the data, and in terms of how you're churning that data.
Thanks. So I think a lot of it, what you're saying, is starting from the single view of the shopper, right? Irrespective of where he or she shops, you start to get that data. So are you saying that if I now shop online and I go to the store, your store assistants will be able to track me as long as I'm on the app, or as long as I'm
Absolutely. Yeah.
Is that the assumption?
Yeah.
So
Because with our single view, again, it comes down to for any retailer, the two most, or rather couple of them, which are the most important ones, is definitely your POS, which is your point of sale in store, where you know your buying history, and then of course your e-commerce side, where through cookies as well as through sign-in accounts, you're able to figure out all the data points through your heat map, so you know what exactly your customers do. Even if the customer doesn't shop, you know a lot more. On the offline side, it becomes difficult just to figure out what they've discovered and giving some recommendations. But because of the data points which we have across online, it really empowers the people out there on the floor in the store to interact with the customer with a lot more relevant content and recommendation. So yeah, it's pretty important to have that single view of customer.
Thanks. Some great insights there. Arvind, coming to you, talk a bit about your business and how you are seeing personalization. What are some of the technologies you guys are using to drive that? And is it purely an online or an offline business? Just talk a bit about that as well, and how do you see that?
Absolutely. Thanks, Rajat. And I actually would build on what Srikanth mentioned, because much of it is actually resonates with what we are seeing here, or with our brand partners. So first and foremost, personalization is, today what it's doing is changing the paradigm around consumer fashion. It's no longer a top-down approach. Now it's more crowdsourced from customers themselves. Each customer is unique. And now where they're getting at is their own way to customize their look and make their style unique. And not only that, with the social media, with the advent of social media and proliferation of that, most of these consumers are actually also want to inspire others. They want to actually showcase their style, their unique style. So it's, what once used to be a top-down approach is no longer, right? So, and this is why most of these consumers or shoppers today, what they do is they look for brands or retailers who actually can offer them the personalization. So it's more about, if it's not relevant content, then I'm not interested, for instance. And I think each one of them could relate with that. So that's just the preface. Now, one thing that we're seeing, very, very common lately, what's happening is over, I would say, last couple of years, and more brands and retailers are jumping on this, is essentially styling itself. When you look at, maybe I'll take a step back. When we transform from offline to online, majority of the shopping, if you look at it, whether it's pandemic, whether it's the internet, but it's basically happening online. So what it is that there's the discovery aspects that's missing. and where that you would have an offline. What Shrikant just mentioned, that somebody walks into the offline in the store and there is somebody who can actually help them. In this case, that aspect is missing. So most of these brands and retailers, what they're trying to do is how do you actually engage the customer? How do you can style them? How can you still actually cater to their preferences? And they've been using multiple tools. So I'll give you a few examples here. And again, with the pretext is that these are AI driven, these are stylist driven. We have Mohit here, or we have, Personal Shopper was mentioned. So I think these are basically, again, a crowdsource where you are actually, looking at what the trend is and then designing the outfits. Some brands actually have started using it, how to wear, for instance. That's just naming one aspect. And what that means is that you as an online shopper, once you are actually, you found a product, you liked it, but you may not necessarily understand how do I actually pair it with, or who do I, who do I pair it with? And that's where the personalization comes in. The brand or the retailer, they understand. Once they understand, and when the businesses we partner with, we basically have that information. We have the unique style of these individuals, and as they come in, we can recommend, okay, this goes with this product. So now you have, you look at your product, you see, okay, what goes with it. You also understand that, and at their website, every item they have a product is essentially not a product, but as a styled product that goes with certain other, what goes with it. It's an entire look. And what that does is that basically cuts down on this the discovery journey. Basically, it makes them, from you discovered it, you like something and you are able to purchase it. The other thing what we're seeing is that from a personalization perspective, the brands are looking at, or retailers are looking at, how do I style by occasion, for instance, right? I already understand what's happening. So it's more macro trend as well as what's happening, what's the customer is looking at. And it could be festival, it could be, a date night, whatever that may be. That's basically your styling for that. So you're creating these styled outfits. Again, it's AI driven, it's with the human stylist, with the human touch, depending on what channel it is, and you're able to showcase it to your consumers. So that actually drives the engagement up. There is another thing that, and we'll talk about hyper-personalization, so I'll expand on it, but just quickly here is that visually similar products or complete the look. I believe something that today, most of these brands and retailers, when they push something out, if it's out of stock, then all of a sudden as a consumer, I liked it, but I can't now buy it. So what's the recourse for me? Going to another brand, or if the brand is innovative enough and smart enough, they are actually showcasing, the visually similar product, maybe slightly different cut, maybe at a different price point. What that does is that still keeps me engaged as a consumer, as a shopper. So that's basically what's happening. I think in general, when you look at how the brands are trying to engage these shoppers using these personalized, obviously the various data points, but also these technological tools that keeps them engaged and keeps them coming back on their site. Now, expanding that to hyper-personalization, because that's where also Shrikant was mentioning, I couldn't agree more, is it's actually a pretty exciting step for digital customer experience if you think about it. It's about using data. It's about using AI machine learning. It's about using predictive analytics. And what that does is that allows you to understand the individual behavior, consumers, change in behavior, I would say, what kind of interactions they're making. And then here's the beauty, right? Then you could actually suggest in real time, like what exactly that they are looking for. So you're basically putting the right product to the right customer at the right time. That's essentially the goal when you look at with hyper-personalization. So that's essentially what it is. And for our audience so that it hits home, so that they understand what exactly what I refer to by hyper-personalization is, think about Netflix, for instance, right? According to, when you look at Netflix, right, 20% of their, only 20% of their, visual, the videos or that is actually coming from search. Rest all is recommendation. How are they doing it? They're doing it based on the behavior, what we are watching, what kind of genre it is, what's, how much we watched and things like that. So that's where I think hyper-personalization in fashion becomes equally important to be able to engage customers and be able to cater to their needs without basically losing them. And I'll add one caveat before handing it over is that, and we have also seen that too much of it it could backfire, right? I mean, I'll give you an example. I can find another, a better one than this is that a couple of years ago, Walgreens, one of the very prominent outlets here, they actually installed everywhere a digital screens on their coolers. And the idea is that they were actually sensing people's motion. They were sensing what you're picking up from the freezers. And then they would show you the complementary product, right? And okay, that's great. Everybody in the shop is looking at that. So that's perfectly fine as long as you're picking, like maybe a 6-pack beer or something. But what if actually it's something private that you want to pick up? So if you want to be discreet about your shopping, then you may not want that, cooler to actually flash it on a screen saying, hey, buy this complimentary product. If it's pizza, it's fine. So that's where there are some caveats. So that's something when we work with our partners, we do always keep that in mind that there's a place and time for it. As Shrikant, aptly put it, it's basically you would want to make sure that it works for where you are applying it, and you have to be mindful about it. But done right, no doubt that it will actually increase the revenue and it will smoothen the customer journey on your website.
Thanks, Arvind. Ravi, I'll come to you. You guys have, obviously you got into the whole bespoke styling, bespoke clothing, and India is a very different market to other markets because 90% of our retail is still offline, only 10% or even less than that is online. And while we talk about hyper-personalization, you almost lose that when you come to retail stores, physical stores. That's where majority of shoppers still shop all the categories today, other barring a few. So how do you guys make it work? Just give a different view on the personalization, because I think Shrikant and Arvind have covered a big chunk of the technology side, but just how do you make it work for Raymond's? What are some of the thoughts? How do you create a single view of shopper that you bring in? And I'll give you my experience from Raymond's perspective as well, because I'm a very loyal customer there. So.
Thank you so much for that. I'm glad that you said that. So I think it's a very interesting, piece when you work for a legacy retailer like Raymond, and unlike many fashion retailers, it's a full integrated fashion company, right? From production to probably the managing the whole supply chain, getting the products right, and then retailing it. And what's been happening actually, if you just look back in the whole fashion cycle, and I'm just off the topic from this, is actually changing from supply side to actually demand side. I mean, if you just go back 10-12 years back, fashion companies would just broadcast fashion that people will go and pick up. And if you go today, what fast fashion and some of those people have done is actually change this whole thing, that people are, or companies are producing fashion what people want. Now, clearly, from a point of view of a very, very retail heavy kind of a company like ours, which has been in legacy for 97 years, one of the largest fashion retailers, we have like millions and millions of footfalls in our stores. We run one of the largest reward program in the country today for fashion, and probably one of the highest retake or repurchases come from our customers coming back onto our stores. And almost like 4 or 5 years back, the company tried to say, hey, let's start the journey in what needs to get done onto the e-commerce side. Like Shri mentioned, I think these are two separate journeys that happened in the company. And that's when we realized that it's not going to work, because there's so much the data that you collect into the store. The experience is so different. I mean, we spoke about saying that, buying for occasion. The customer walking into a retail store of Raymond has actually made up his mind that he's coming in for an occasion, and he's going to give you tons and tons of data that what does he need, why does he need it, how does it style for. Now, how do you capture that data and probably store it with you, not only in terms of understanding the preference and building cohorts of the people coming in terms of buying similar products, but also in terms of reaching out to the consumers who are showing similar behavior onto the online space, because that's where you can develop interest and start getting more and more customers who are today not considering Raymond, but start considering Raymond because you understand what we can offer to them. So what happens in our case is probably we are building a lot of tech into the store, and some of this is related to vision and NLP. Some of this is also in terms of modernizing the POS to probably capture the data out there. We have a very strong data lake which we are evolving to a CDP right now, and integrating it to the consumer journeys onto the onlines, and integrating it to the tools like ADH and Google AdWords to probably correlate back in terms of what's happening on commerce, what's happening in our store. How do you get the blend of this behavior and do this? But yes, we are extremely mindful for one thing. Too much of anything becomes very difficult, especially in a store environment. You just can't go back to a consumer with a wrong recommendation because he's used to a behavior when he walks into the store. uh, Generally, when you're on an e-commerce site, you can have 20 products being cataloged to you, and they are very closer to this. What happens in the store is there's a human intelligence which is being supported by an artificial intelligence or some tool. So it's a mix of how well the guy will understand the technology to go and serve the consumer. And you don't want to mess up with the guy because he's just a retail guy, right? Who's interacting with the consumer. You don't want to mess up with that guy. And I'm sure Shopper is doing a great job with getting 10% from those personal shoppers, because I think one of the principles there has to be provide rightful and minimal information which is meaningful, rather than overload information which can become confusing for the guy. And that's what we do in terms of personalization as a space. I think we look at it in three separate aspects. One is clearly in terms of personalization on products. Like you said, bespoking a product is like at the heart of Raymond. You really want to make something. Raymond can make that. We are the largest tailors of the world. We are also powerhouse brands in apparel space which are there with us in Park Avenue, Parks, Color Plus, Ethnics, all of this. The second piece of personalization is clearly understanding consumer journeys, both in store and in the commerce on our website. Very similar to what Shrikant mentioned happening at Shopper Stop, happening everybody. We are taking advantages of those technologies to understand behaviors. And the third piece is in terms of communication. I think when you start running a large program and interacting with consumers, either, and I'm not talking about general marketing, but when you talk about remarketing, because consumer coming to your website and you want to remarket to them, you want to be very specific how many times of frequencies you want to go and represent to a consumer and with what product. And overdoing something is at point of time becomes repulsive. So we are very conscious that you personalize these experiences, understand the channel that you want to personalize, and play on that. So that's what we're doing at Raymond. I think it's pretty exciting from point of view of where consumers are evolving to. Unlike personalization that you get to see in other products, fashion, it's actually far more difficult, because fashion, the product itself is changing at all point of time. I mean, knowing a preference for me is not going to be a valid preference for me in the next season, because the fashion will change next season. So it's an always learning experience and building onto it. And nobody is never at the same cohort. The cohorts are changing for the same customer based on his experience and evolution. And that's what I think the work is much more in fashion than any other industry, if I can say from my experience.
No, thanks, Ravi. Very comprehensive. So I think some interesting points from you, Shrikant, Arvind, in terms of creating looks based on occasions, single view of shopper, then trying to bring technology in. What is the frequency of purchase in your stores versus, I would say, like in Shopper Stop? How frequently do you see shoppers coming back for purchases in your environment?
So on an average, if I would say for our reward customers, our frequency of purchase is almost slightly above more than 2 visits a year. But most of these purchases from rewards are actually very heavy. They are not impulse off the shelf purchases which are happening for just like say one t-shirt or one shirt. They are like significant amount of wardrobe purchases which have happened. However, when you go back into our commerce site, the frequency goes up much higher. It's upward of 4, because that's where you can go and excite somebody to come back and pick up only a single product and do that rather than a larger purchase.
But 2 is less, huh? So that's challenging for you guys to keep the shopper engaged on 2.5 visits. We talk about a lot of the stuff. How do you keep getting them back in? Because 2 means they have so much chance to get distracted before the second visit. Shrikant, sorry, go ahead.
No, but that's the reality, right? Like I said, see, imagine the product that we play in right now, probably in a formal occasion wear category and all of it, the way we are playing, getting a consumer to, if he comes back and picks up a larger share of the wardrobe. See, the idea is that if in one visit I can end up, having a guy pick up 6 trousers, 7 shirts, and 2 jackets. I don't want him to come back again after 3 months or 6 months and buy it again. I'm happy that he comes back in the next season and come and do that. So that's why I said average is 2. Some of the customers come back more often, but we are also talking about, just to give you the width of the scale, we are talking about this average coming from almost 1,500 plus stores, over 10 million footfalls. So clearly from that point of view, it's a very, very, I mean, we are in 600 towns right now as a retail company. And from that point of view, the frequency would be much higher in maybe in urbans and metros out there, but we have to average it out in terms of how with and what kind of footfall are you talking about.
Fantastic, fantastic. Shrikant, you were going to say?
Yeah, no, similar to what Ravi said. Yeah, it's just over 2 for us as well. But again, so ours is a paid loyalty program. So one of our top tiers is Black tier. So Black tier customer ends up coming 5 times. So it's one of those kind of things. But then I think the beauty where we feel that the big opportunity lies, which is still only underpenetrated, is these omni-channel customers who shop across channels. I think with that, what we've seen, though the number is still, let's say, a single digit, but then we have that intention to make it a strong double digit, because these are the customers where we track 2 things on a high level. One is the average member spend, in a way that's your wallet share or your wardrobe share, whatever you call it. So that is 5 times if you index it only against a store only customer, right? And then the number of frequency of transactions naturally also goes up. So I think that's where the real beauty is, because at the end of the day, both for Ravi and for me, Raymond customers or Shopper Stop customers are also shopping online, right? It may be that they're shopping within Raymond and Shopper Stop maybe a lot lesser as compared to everywhere else. So that's where the opportunity is, because these are the customers who have been coming to our stores for the longest of time. And now why should there be a reason that they don't come to our respective brand.coms and go somewhere else? So that's where that opportunity is. So, and when it comes down to, and for us, it's at the end of the day, it's always, and I'm saying this on behalf of Ravi, and you can correct me, Ravi, but I think for us, it's always about driving sustainable, scalable, and profitable business. Yeah. Because all the funding which we do for our e-commerce is coming in from the EBIT we make out of our offline business. As simple as that, right? We're not backed by anybody else. So it becomes even more important for us to respect that. And for us to make that happen, the retargeting, repeat customer, overall retention has to be a lot higher, which creates the appetite for us to go out in the market to acquire new customers. So for us to make that happen, this becomes even more critical, that we further penetrate into that massive loyalty base, which we're all sitting on, to make sure they shop across online as well as they're doing for offline. And together, that's a strong force to reckon with.
Thanks. Yeah, makes sense. I mean, lots of touch points to create that. And the number you gave of 8 touch points before a shopper makes a decision is pretty, and that's what we are seeing. It's a very, if we're going from that funnel approach of a shopper journey, it's all become a very decentralized approach to shopping. Mohit, I'll come to you. Talk briefly about what you're seeing in terms of personalization as you're working with brands as a stylist, etc. And talk a bit about also, like one of the questions that we had sort of wanted to talk about was our fashion influencers, the retailers of 2022, and what is the role they play, and and how is that, what next for influencers? Let's talk briefly about the personalization part, and then let's talk about the other part.
Sure. So I think the most important thing to remember right now is that it's a really exciting time, right? Like, this is so exciting that you have the opportunity, like for something like what's been discussed already, is that you get into you go on a platform to necessarily look for an occasion, and you're getting styling advice. This has never happened before online. This has only happened maybe offline when you went into stores, maybe if you knew someone in the store before and you had the comfort level to trust them. Here are now professionals sitting online and giving you advice on how to dress and how to put things together. I think, rightly said, that is going to obviously increase engagement. From a very personal perspective in life, whenever I have interacted with brands or interacted with clients, I think clients always and brands always need that holding hand. They want that personalized sort of help to help them put it together. It's really never just about consumption, like blind consumption and impulsive consumption. It really is about just how to style things and how to put it together, and also finding an original sort of individual style. So I think that's where and AI being able to do that, I think that's really exciting. I think putting AI together with stylists, like professional stylists, to do it together, I think that's, again, like I said, a really exciting time. Where I think influencers come into this is most of the influencers doing well, for example, or have the reach that we're looking out for, have extremely relatable content. They have the kind of content that people immediately resonate with, be it body type driven or like skin type driven or just personality type driven. I think some of the most influential influencers have a very relatable content. So I think influencers are definitely and I think we've all seen, and I think most brands would agree, the engagement and the conversions that influencers bring in, they're sometimes even higher than like the biggest of Bollywood or Hollywood celebrities, because there is a relatability there, and there's a direct way of consuming a product and how to wear it and how to style it in your daily life and for occasions. So I think their influencers really come in, and I think where the influencers are going now is towards creation. So exactly what now the websites are doing, which is giving personalized styling content. That's where the influencers are going. They're becoming creators, and they're creating content for you, which is not just about it's not just like paid content. Okay, you can go here and shop this and shop this. It really needs to resonate with people's personal style, and I think that's where it's headed. In fact, I think it's already there. So yeah, so like I said, I mean, I think it's really exciting to have all these different channels coming together and helping consumers understand and buy, and also I think be able to understand their own style better. So yeah.
Yeah, but are you seeing influencers also get a bit jaded now in China? You know, we saw a big trend of influencers, and so KOLs move to KOCs, where key opinion consumers and shoppers are becoming more with smaller cohorts rather than, because the shoppers are starting to think that influencers are paid. They're just endorsing products for which they're getting paid for. And China has seen a big flip. I mean, I'm not sure where things are post-COVID and lockdowns, but last year, there was a big move in China from KOLs to KOCs, and saying that, you know, influencers are great. And of course, people who are super influencers, the Ronaldos and the Kim Kardashians of the world, or the local big celebrities, they continue to reign. But there was a big push and a switch in last 2 years ago to KOCs, where say, I believe that because this is a peer-to-peer shopper advice rather than an influencer advice. Are you seeing some of that take off in India as well, or it's still very much driven by influencers who are, you know, creating their own content, but they're also mostly paid by brands in some form?
No, so definitely, which is where I think the creators come in, which is why I brought that up. Influencers like fashion bloggers, how they've done in the past, or even actors, for example, because they were sort of key opinion leaders at one point, and whatever they would endorse would sort of become the trend. I think what we've seen now is why creators are sort of doing well is because there is relatability, and even though, of course, you know, somewhere in the back of your mind that definitely there is some paid content there is a lot of really real content, a lot of really relatable content. So I think that's exactly, yes. I mean, there's been a great shift in the market. I mean, we've seen live. And I think any brand would tell you as well that people who were just doing fashion and people who were just doing, influencing people from their position of power, that has shifted to people sometimes even from the grassroots coming up and starting to influence people in their buying patterns, specifically because they're very relatable and they're creating content that specifically some body types are relating to, or specifically some physical or facial features are relating to. So yeah, definitely that has been a shift for sure towards the creator.
Thanks. Arvind, I'll come to you. Just talk a bit about the role of CX in the post-COVID environment. And CX has always been important we've already talked about it, but when you look at it as a shopper, your journey falls very flat in the business. When you go to a store, a lot of the times you're not recognized. There's no further, a lot of the time, other than e-commerce, where you're getting a lot of recommendations, the whole shopping experience goes quite flat. I'm talking from the India shopper point of view, even in the West when you shop, because companies are still not harnessing the power of the data in store. The whole shopper journey from whether search, navigate, at the till, checkout, the whole experience becomes quite muddled because somewhere or the other you don't find that. Just talk a bit about what you're seeing in the West, and then we'll come to Srikanth and Ravi on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And actually, a couple of things I will add to also based on the last one, but this is a good segue into that. It's basically, to pick up what Ravi mentioned earlier in terms of the, in-store shoppers, right? And in many cases, we're seeing here is that to enhance that customer experience, that shopping experience inside the stores, they actually are leveraging the AIs, they are leveraging the styling techniques. And what they're doing is that brands and retailers often partner with, fashion tech companies, right? And they basically are handing these technologies, and as simple as a AI styling tool, for instance, just a simple an iPad and somewhere where you have this tool, because it's very doable these days. And they actually provide these to their sales representatives and with instant access to these tools, right? They allow what these people would, or these salespeople would do is they would actually take these, and they would, now somebody walks into the store, they would give them this VIP experience to the customer, as they'll take the account of their, what are they looking for, their unique features. There were talks about the facial colors, the body type preferences. Absolutely, you can build all of that, and now you have this tool in the hand of your salesperson, and they're able to create the style while they are working with the person who is actually in there. And they're also loving it because, they're able to provide the input. They are there for a reason. They're already getting the, the preferred service, the VIP service, which they're loving it, right? So that's where the piece comes in. So you can very well translate what you're doing online to offline as well. It's just infrastructure, it's slightly different, but what we're seeing is, it's absolutely, you're able to recommend the visually similar product. Like, even in stores, sometimes there's a product that's out of stock. You can perfectly use that, your inventory, and you have it on your, basically an iPad, I'm just giving an example, and you can pick up another style. You can provide it to your customer who is actually in the store, and that way they're more engaged. They are getting these personal services. So again, that's where the whole technology, AI styling, or styling itself comes into play with that. And it's not a lot of investment, but what you did is you actually just, made a loyal customer, both online and offline. You're connecting that. So we talked about omni-channel, so that this is what once looks like. And by the way, you also collected data on that person. So now next time that comes in, you already have a styled outfit for them, or you already have a personalized, suggestion. There was, I think, Ravi, you mentioned that the fashion changes. Absolutely, it does change. And that's what's one beautiful thing about is that, I think the fundamental would still stay the same from a perspective of, like the color choices and stuff. And yeah, sometimes, or you're thinking, spring comes in, I'll go more peach, and the brand and retailers have to think about it. But you are getting that data as you are actually engaging your customers in store. And we say this here quite a bit actually, and that definitely builds the connection between the offline and online journey, I would say, the customer journey. One other thing I would mention that it's interesting to learn about the Ravi's and Shopper Stops and Raymond's with their metrics. On the online side there, when I completely look at from the perspective of when we are using the personalized services, when we are actually engaging the consumers more often, we're seeing a huge increment in the product discovery. And, it's fourfold. And these are basically the case studies from when you look at it. So there are actually data that suggest that your product exposure is fourfold. Your engagement goes, 300%, for instance. You are actually able to increase your basket size, by 30%, north of 30%. So those are very, very actionable, and I would say measurable metrics that you are actually measuring after you have implemented these solutions. And one thing that, and this is something, after the fact, people think about it, but what we found out working with various brands and retailers is as you are doing the personalization, as you are actually thinking about not just a product, but as a person as a whole, and what it looks from a fashion perspective, just top down, head to toe look. If you're able to provide them that, then you're also able to save on your shipping cost. And that's actually, north of 40%. Why? Because as even in online, when I'm buying something, I actually want it next day, right? Amazon has spoiled us and here, and I'm pretty sure in India also now it's more and more consumers want their product when they buy, and instantaneous access to that. So now when you bought it in bundles, you were actually, its brand also, it's perfectly fine, for them. They can actually ship them all together to the customer. So you are actually saving your shipping cost there. And that is a direct P&L hit. So that's where I think that's importance of, providing the personalization, looking at it from, working with the consumer to understand their, preferences, their unique style, and presenting it to them, what essentially would, engage them more with your brand and basically keep them coming.
Thanks, Arvind. Shrikant, just coming to you on this. Just talk a bit about how do you measure CX as a business? How much importance do you give it? Because NPS, we've been talking about it for a long time. Seems a bit of a tired metric. I don't know whether you guys still use it or not. It does give some inputs, but it's not really a great measure for CX, right? So how do you measure CX, and what is the importance of CX for you in store as you are as you are sort of building up your evaluating people's performance in store and online?
No, I may sound a little old school, but we do continue NPS, and I think
No, I'm not saying it's not don't get me wrong, it's not old
no,
school.
I know,
It's
I know what you
it's
mean.
just another measure for that. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I think today there's so many others as well with regards to, we have something called CSATs. We do CSATs pre-order, we do CSATs post-order as well. Then of course, there's so many touch points today, right? Because as a retailer, as a seller, you need to be across everywhere where the customer is. So, and every occasion and every channel creates that level of funnel for you to better understand your detractors a lot better, and then what you need to do about it. So no, it's super critical. In fact, for every weekly or every management meeting we have got, we actually start with that just to understand what the customers are talking about us, and again, from what it used to be at a very high level to something which has gone a lot more specific because of the kind of questionnaires we are coming up with without boring the customer. We are getting that data, and that's helpful. But I think Arvind talked so many things. I'm running out of topics now because he pretty much covered everything. But I think one point for the audience and for all of us, I think, to acknowledge is in a setup like ours and similar to Ravi, I think it gets important to really acknowledge what your core assets are. So for us, let's say what our core assets is going to be our stores, the network of stores, the people out there, the brand relationships we've got, all the brands we carry, and of course that customer data. So these are our core assets. So then it comes down to how do you leverage those core assets, drive incremental value, may not necessarily drive incremental cost. And that's truly what omnichannel is all about, right? From a pure business sense. And when you talk about from a customer side, so one of the feedbacks I'll give is that at any given point of time, if a customer, your intention, be it online or offline, what is fundamental is to convert. As simple as that. You have to convert. You can't let the customer go. And even from an offline side, I think on the online, we know the various funnel metrics and how we can engage them better across the multiple touch points we've got, and we know how to do it. But on the offline side as well, because of the omni-channel presence, and I'll give you a fact with how we're seeing this. So things like endless aisle. The endless aisle is becoming very critical for us because today shopperstop.com is the biggest flagship store for the business, right? Because obviously we don't have any of those physical real estate challenges. So we tend to carry not just the current season, but also season -1, -2. We have that entire plethora of options, which you'll not find. You may find some of them in a store in the top city like a Bombay to the Raigards of the world, right? So what that enables us now is that there are so many of these occasions, and I'm talking about almost 20% of the total digital sales today is getting driven by customers walking into store, not able to find color, style, and size for whatever they desire. And it's the associate out there in the store helping the customer out, taking the customer through online, and we're able to drive that level of sales coming in. This is absolutely incremental sales. Right? And that's the true power of omnichannel, right? Because, and one could all, and it's easier said than done, because you need to then understand what sort of incentive, how do you incentivize that associate on the floor to make this happen? Because it's an online revenue. And that's where it becomes fundamental for an organization to understand that at the end of the day, it's a single entity. These are, though it's a different channels, but that seamlessness needs to be there. At the end of the day, we're here to serve the customer, and whatever backend processes we need to have to make sure that you get a buy-in from everyone, from the retail floor to the digital to all the CXOs, it is required to make that happen, because you don't end up lose a customer. Give us all the options as possible. And for me, that's the true CX, right? At the end of the day, that customer experience of not able to find a particular product they're desiring for in their respective catchment area, you don't disappoint that customer. You
Absolutely.
still have various ways of
doing
it.
That's the true CX.
And I think on the point which Arvind rightly talked about towards the end with regards to shipping costs, and I would just, maybe I digress a bit, but it's important for us to acknowledge that we talk about Amazon and how wonderfully they've done, and they've taught us so much. And there are areas which we need to pick, which doesn't mean there is millions of dollars of investment to make that happen. But then it's about driving that express delivery, driving that the whole algorithms, which talks about proximity to the customer, availability of inventory, all of those, because we've got that data. So just like we talked about single view of customer, there is a single view of inventory. You need to understand every SKU at every door which is out there, as well as your distribution center. You know your customers. How fast can you make that happen in the most economical way? So it doesn't come with a cost, rather. And once you start doing that, more importantly, from a commercial side, also it helps a lot, because you save your margin erosion, because you're able to diversify your distribution channels in a much more effective way without attracting dedicated stocks and sucking your working capital in any form. So
Absolutely.
Truly, it really works. And it comes down to the fact that you need to then understand, leverage your core assets and drive that value, and not necessarily driving cost. Obviously, initially, for the audience to know that, of course, you need to build a foundation. You need to have a very robust platform. You need to have the right auto management system. You need to have your right API integrations done across all your upstream, downstream systems. That once that's done, then you need to make sure that where is the real value you would drive for your customer, for you to uplift your conversion. So at the end of the day, it's all out there. It's much easier for a retailer to take this plunge if done right, compared to any pure play to start ground up. So because of all the legacy we carry.
Thanks, yeah, Shrikant. Mohit, I'm going to come to you, and then Ravi to you. Mohit, just talk briefly about how are your clients measuring CX? How important is it for them as you're creating these new collections, helping people design? And then we'll basically try and get on to a few questions I've got. I'll come to you guys for those.
Sure. I think for obviously, like I think everyone's mentioned before, I think CX becomes the most important thing for recall and for to come back and consume that product and that brand again. I think at the end of the day, what we just have to remember is that, of course, collecting a lot of data and obviously helping people and sometimes overloading information can work. But I think at the end of the day, you have to remember that when you're working with it's a human being at the that you're dealing with. So there has to be something that makes them feel comfortable, and there has to be something that makes them feel good about how they're looking. When they're consuming a product, it's, of course, there's numbers and there's business and there's all of that. But the consumer, for them, when they come to a store or when they're coming online, the point is that they're looking to come and buy something that'll make them look and feel good. Which is where I think when the whole styling concept came up, I think that's a really great direction to go in, because that is definitely going to amp up the customer experience. It's not just about trying to throw things in their face, which you know that they've previously bought or that they've liked, or any colors that they've liked. Because I think you mentioned that fashion keeps changing. Fashion does keep changing, just like all of us. All our moods change, but style never changes. So somebody's individual style will always stay what it is. They may want to wear bright colors this season, but all blacks next season. That happens to all of us, right? We get over things, we get into new things every season. But what they will remember is their style and how they wear it. So I think giving them something that's their format and their method of wearing it, and what they feel and look good in, and what they also feel most flattered in, which is again where I said, like, the original concept of the whole body types and that sort of mapping comes in. But customer experience obviously is the most important thing, I think. And if a consumer liked the overall experience of how they were dealt with and how they were met with, and if they were directed towards the right kind of overall look in product, then of course they're bound to come back. And word of mouth is obviously like it really does come into play. There are so many brands that have been built on word of mouth, specifically because of their experience that they give to people when it comes to making people feel and look good.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't agree with you more. And I think that the more brands can invest on empowering their salespeople, to what Shrikant was saying, how do you help a guy convert a business? Because it's so easy to say, I don't have it in my store, I'll come back to you. And then 90% of the time, they're just not able to come back to you. And then you feel like you lose the shopper completely, and then the shopper goes to another place. It's personal experience. I'm not saying I'm speaking for everybody, but generally that tends to happen because, that's just the nature of the game. And how do you enable in-store guys to get connected to the online piece? And what people like Sephora have done, you have a basket, you can go in store and open the basket, continue shopping on it, and get the guys with tools. Today's smartphones, etc., have that, so that you say, hey, you are here, are you browsing around, how can I help you check out quickly, how can I help you find something, if it's not here, how can I, it's all of that engagement, right? But it all comes down to KPIs, tracking. So I come to some questions, guys. Great discussion. I think we can go on for a couple of hours because this is such a hot topic right now. And me as a shopper, as well as on the consulting side, I keep thinking, how does it all come together for businesses to really make it real, especially in India, where trained manpower in store is not of that caliber sometimes. The churn is also high, and then 90% of business is offline still. So I don't know, any of you can take this. This is from Biswajit Pal. How can we personalize the content when the ground reality is that e-commerce account is used by several family members? Interesting one. So I don't know, maybe one of you guys want to just raise your hand and have a stab at it.
I can start, and I'll look for the others to pitch in. So Biswajit, thanks for the question. If I understand this correctly, you're asking, how do we look at personalization or how can we personalize if, let's say, all of your family members are using the same account? Yeah, that becomes interesting. And it's essentially, when we look at style, right? So for what we do is that, and I think most of these innovative brands and retailers is they're looking at, and I'm only going to stick to fashion at this point, is basically trying to understand your style, what, basically your activities that you're doing on social. I'm hoping that not all of your entire family is actually on just one profile for social media, for Instagram, for Facebook, or everywhere. Well, obviously, then you got us. Then,
Yeah, there's no way to personalize.
Exactly. Then we would do the family personalization if that becomes that. But if there are those points that we look at, there is actually devices that is being looked at, right? Because they have a different impression of fingerprinting. And then when we look at, the location based, when we look at your various social media profile, we try to map that, who is it, what are you browsing, and things like that. So there are these trails that we all leave, and believe me, we do leave. And those are the ones that these, as your engine is actually smarter and smarter, it starts picking up and tries to personalize. Now, of course, if it's one account, it becomes really hard. However, there are augmentation to those. There are, mechanism that you could actually deduce what it is. It's not going to be at the nth level as for an individual case, but it's going to be, better than what you would get without personalization.
Shrikant, Ravi, anybody?
Just to add there, very, very, very relevant question. And in fact, a couple of years ago, we were struggling with the same because, as I said, First Citizen, which is a loyalty program that drives north of 70% of our total sales. And somehow, and in India, you see this more often, is the registration happens on the male name for some reason, right? It could be the father or the husband or the brother, and then the entire family is doing. Not trying to be racist. I think it should be the other way around, but this is what it is. So it became very difficult because initially we started creating cohorts, and then the male figure became so big, and because we were looking at that gender, and then it became even more important for us to come up with a lot more different cohorts, and that came down to the kind of category shopping they were doing. So I think having multiple accounts today for us, of course, the cohorts continue to change, which Ravi talks about, which absolutely true. But then we tend to make it a lot more on the category driven, right? And it depends on the kind of frequency. So for some businesses, it makes sense for them to create a cohort which could last for 3 months, for 6, for 12 months, depends on the kind of frequency you're looking at. But then generally cohorts are changing, and cohorts for us, we tend to keep it based on the sell-throughs, which is on the category specific, nothing to do with gender, because we totally get this. We have the same concern, and that's a behavior in India. So yeah, so I think there's no running away from it. But then for you to drive that personalization, you just got to make sure that you're able to map those signals you get both from a browsing as well as from a shopping behavior across channels, but keep it at a product level, product end.
Yeah, I think just to add to it, I think problem is a bit solved for us. We are only a men's fashion brand, so clearly we end up being only with father, son, or brothers out there in our profile. But yes, like Shri mentioned, we see this. We end up seeing that one rewards account is being used to accumulate purchases for multiple male family members' purchases out there. Interestingly, like I said, we are trying to capture much more from our consumer visits into our store, and we are able to create parent and sub-parent account. We may not have the other details for them, but we are trying to capture more about the family birthdays, family occasions, and stuff like that. Now, couple this up with the question which came for the e-commerce. Now, e-commerce is makes the life a bit more simpler, right? Because what you're doing socially is from your own independent account, and we are not trying to force fit it back to our CDP with saying that there's a similar account showing similar behavior. We are also trying to look at the retargeting behavior. It's saying that this account came back and looked at what on our sites. So if somebody is looking at a particular kind of products, the marketing efforts are going for those kind of products and not always overloaded with past purchase behavior which is out there. So I think tech is smart, unless you're trying to fool tech. I mean, that's a different way, but tech is pretty smart today. This the algorithms are pretty smart to probably filter out things. They can still be an exception of 1 or 2% still out there.
Yeah, waistline going from there to there and moving between the family members. You're like, okay, what's happened to this guy? But yeah, it's interesting points. You don't think about it. Family, male, because women probably don't want to give their information out. So the whole family then shops. Then accumulation of points. Indians are good at aggregation. So sare points, ek hi account mein dal do. I mean, it just sort of works well for us. And I actually you don't think about how you solve for some of these areas. One other question. Anybody else wants to have a go? I'll talk another question. What are some of the challenges D2C fashion brands are seeing in India? Is it still a good idea to pursue this, or is it already saturated? Saturated? I'm not so sure, but D2C, you guys, Arvind, Shrikant, Mohit, anybody wants to have a stab at it? And then I think we just take one more question and start to wrap up.
Yeah, no, it's very subjective. It's very subjective to the category you're in, to the business and the operating model you follow. But a general thumb rule, again, doesn't work for everybody. This is what I feel. You should have a D2C, obviously with all the right merits, but also be digital first rather. So it doesn't mean that you can't diversify your distribution channels. There's no harm. If it's at the end of the day, your product is the king, right? So you're working on a product which is differentiated. I'm assuming that is the case, rather than you being an aggregator. So as a D2C, if you're a brand and your product is the key out here, no harm for you to also venture out to various other places, do your POCs and understand, and at least get your working capital going while your D2C as a direct to customer platform continues to evolve. Because for that to really grow, it does take time, unless and until, of course, it's subjective. But I would rather want the brands to be digital first, because even for us in Shopper Stop, I'm dealing with a lot of D2C, but then they naturally, by the definition of it, they are not D2C if I sell it. Yeah. So it is digital first brands which I'm working with, and of course as a retailer I have certain margin as well on that. So I think it's important for brands to diversify, to understand what sort of cohorts, what sort of environments, and what's clicking for them. And then of course investing in D2C is critical, but very subjective. It really depends on what the entire model is, and if they have figured out the light at the end of the tunnel as well. So
yeah, the margin pressure on customer acquisition and service and returns and payments, it's just a humongous piece, right? So unless it's scalable, it's very tough. People are excited about D2C, yeah, but then D2C is not just simply just shipping a product to a customer's house. It's all the whole shopper experience, the returns, the cash management, and all of that stuff. Sorry, Arvind, you were going to say something?
No, I think it's the only thing I would add to what Shrikant mentioned, besides the digital first part, is that what you were kind of alluding to is the customer experience. When you go for D2C, your key is the customer experience. How are you going to differentiate yourself? How are you going to treat your customers, or your, that's where it's actually the key. What's going to make you successful? When customers feel appreciated, when they are feeling that, okay, they are getting those due diligence, due attention from the brands, that's where companies, right, or D2C businesses would gain, measurable benefits. So that's just one point I would mention. And we were talking about personalization, hyper personalization, CX and all. I think those are, you'd have to really solidify that and make sure that you're able to, help your customer, right? And you meet your customer and basically make them feel valued. That would be the key to D2C.
If I may just add just 2 points on this, very quickly, and because all of us has been and very subjective as a topic. I think two changes are there specifically to India as an opportunity that people get excited about D2C. One, clearly the digital inroads and influence has reached much faster than the physical infrastructure, like number of malls or high street that could go to lower towns versus the shopping behavior. So that enabled a lot of brands to reach to consumer faster. Of course, cost of acquisition, servicing, and product has to be the king for it to be, sustainable long-term business plan. The other thing is itself, clearly, while you can define this whole matrix of, D2C, but I agree with Shri when he says that don't let it be just an e-commerce online only. I mean, look at distribution channels in a far more open way. It has to be born on the cloud as an initiative, but then the service can probably go as the most effluent way to reach to the consumer directly. I think that's very, very critical.
Sure, sure. Just one last question. There's a couple of questions on metaverse and Web3. Anybody wants to take that up, just in terms of what that does for personalization, fashion. Shrikant, you're smiling, so I'm going to give you the first shot at that. So
Yeah, I'm looking at Arvind. I think he seems to be very eager. So let him take that.
No. Please go ahead, Shrikant. I'll add. Please go ahead.
So we have been, of course. So I would not deny that that's a topic we have been looking at, both from both deep, like all three aspects. In fact, deep tech, computer vision, metaverse. These are the topics which we have been playing around as well. Again, and personally, I don't think it's going to be a fad. I think there is a lot of merit in start working on it. But for businesses like ours, and we're a listed company, so it becomes also important for us to be a little more careful in some of these things. So I think that monetization per se hasn't really come out very, very clearly yet. Everybody is still trying to figure that out, and that's a journey. Again, we are at a very nascent stage, I would say. I don't want to comment anything further because it can't go in a public domain at this stage. So,
sure.
So all of us are figuring out. That's what I would say. Yeah.
Arvind, Mohit, any comments on metaverse?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, definitely we're seeing a lot more activity in metaverse, especially as it comes to NFT. Many of these actually bigger brands and retailers have, jumped on this bandwagon, and, obviously for right reasons. There are actually various aspects to it. Like, you talk about digital twins or just having these brands actually, some of you may already know, right, that, for instance, Gucci, they are selling their NFT. Actually, the purse would be actually costlier on the metaverse as an NFT as opposed to the actual one, right? So that your digital twin. And the idea behind it is that, in general, the fashion industry has been, a lot more, what they call is like environmental pollution and polluting kind of stuff. And how do we actually get away from that? And our supply chain looks like, so it's these are like one of those things where we're saying, oh, we're going to backtrack and we're going to actually start creating these, which would have exact same characteristics. So, while it's, it's pretty in its infancy, there are brands, the bigger brands with the deeper pockets have actually started playing into this and created these. And right now it's actually still, there's a lot more to be done here. But basically what most of us, in fact, even FASHMATES started trying is we started creating NFTs and kind of started working with the community and stuff. So there's a lot of learning even for us in that field. So it's a fairly, a fairly new field. And to what Shri mentioned is that I think we all going to learn and see how this is, but there are actually big, heavy hitters who are actually paving the way for all of us in that direction.
Thanks. Yeah, I think we need to first get to understand the shopper before we come up with the digital twin, right? So maybe a bit of distance to go there. Ravi, Mohit, any last comments on that before we start to just wrap up?
No, so I think it's a very exciting space, and we studied some of these NFTs very closely at our end. But honestly, we clearly think that the market is not at a maturity stage in India right now to probably invest and get to a consumer experience of them owning these NFTs or building up a metaverse twins. We are doing a lot of work on 3D or visualization solutioning in terms of that. Now, we don't know how these will go and exist on multiple metaverse or unified metaverse eventually, but that's some base work we are doing. But clearly, right now, we don't see a business case or any merit in terms of NFT-led business being built onto this right now.
Sure. Mohit?
Yeah, I can't speak for any of the businesses, of course, but from a creative standpoint, it's really exciting. I think a lot of the influence is really getting into it. And I think the eventual, I think the whole concept that this lies on is that eventually people are living very different virtual lives than they are real lives. So to be able to just create a fantasy and sort of synthesize some great outfits for yourself and then put it on your social media, I think it's really exciting in the influencer space for sure. But I don't know. I mean, I definitely can't speak for businesses.
All right. So on that note, guys, thank you so much for a very exciting conversation. I mean, there's so much to talk about fashion in terms of fast fashion, pollution effects, environment effects, what happens to that. Also, point Ravi mentioned, just changes so frequently that just when you think you know the shopper, he or she is moved to another whole space in terms of how he or she is behaving based on peer pressures. Just a very, very exciting time, and can't be easy jobs for all of you trying to manage that in addition to very disrupted supply chains. So take care. Thank you so much. Any last words from anybody before we wrap up?
I just want to thank you, Rajat. Thanks for helping us, have this dialogue, and to all the fellow panelists here, and obviously all the viewers. Thank you all. We appreciate your questions, and look forward to catching up or connecting with you offline.
Thank you, guys.
Rajat, and thank you all co-panelists. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys. Stay safe and take care, and good luck.
All right. Cheers, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone, for
Thanks,
bringing
guys.
those
Thank you.
pertinent points to the table. The industry insights, certainly a very engaging and interesting discussion. On behalf of ET Retail and FASHMATES, I thank you all for sparing your precious time from your busy schedule. Thank you to the audience for your active participation. Hope you got answers to your questions. Finally, thank you to FASHMATES for partnering with us. Once again, thank you to all of you. Take good care of yourself and your loved ones, and keep following etretail.com for fresh content and latest events happening. Take care and stay safe.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye.